What is more awesome than a giant bipedal war machine made from moon metal? A giant bipedal war machine made from moon metal with a giant sword? Sure, every Gunpla kit I list in this list won't be based on a mobile suit made from moon metal, but by Amuro, they will have giant swords. As usual with these lists, every kit mentioned in this video is a kit that I have reviewed in the past, so if I have not reviewed it yet, then sadly it won't be featured. Besides the number 1 spot, that is. But that's because that one is particularly special. Also, I tried to make sure that the 4 main grades were featured in the list at least once, so no matter if you're a collector of high grade, real grades, master grades, or perfect grades with a penchant for large death-dealing slabs of awesomeness, there will be something for you here. And speaking of swords and death-dealing, once again, thank you so much to Raid for supporting the channel by sponsoring this video. Raid Shadow Legends is a turn-based RPG done right. In case you guys don't know yet, Raid isn't just available on mobile, it's now also available on PC. Even better, it can be played cross-device. So you can play it from the comfort of your own gaming station, or switch to mobile to grind some levels while you build some Gunpla. And now, the highly anticipated Battle Pass is on. Season 1 is live. Now you have even more reason to complete those daily and weekly challenges. With Battle Pass, you can win awesome rewards, including free energy refills, gems, upgraded artifact sets, as well as new epic and legendary champions just by fulfilling those challenges. So what are you waiting for? You can download the game right now. Check out those links down there in the description, and if you are a new player, you can get 100,000 silver and a free champion, Hexweaver. Just look at that awesome hero they're giving you for free. All of this treasure will be waiting for you right here on your game's homepage for the next 30 days. Now onto the video to check out some awesome Gunpla swords. So coming in at the bottom of the list at number 10 is the Sandrock's Heat Hotels. Specifically the ones we get with the Master Grade variant. So I've never actually reviewed the Master Grade variant of Sandrock. It's something I've always meant to do. I need to get around to it soon. But this right here is what they look like. These are crazy big, crazy awesome, and even better, we've got a pair. When it comes to the high grade, which is what you're going to be seeing more so in this video right here, these are a little bit on the small side in comparison, but they still are quite cool and they're anime accurate. I did want to add something else into the list because it is going to get a little bit dominated by Double O and Seed later on, especially towards the number 1 spot, so these are a nice little change of pace to start this off with. Not only are they big, not only is there 2 of them, but they can also be attached onto the backpack and shield to create essentially a giant Gundam crab claw. How awesome is that? And hey, Gundam Wing always deserves that shout out. So now moving into the number 9 spot, you can't make a list about massive Gundam swords without talking about a model kit that, well, its whole identity is the fact that it has a massive sword. That of course is the high-grade Helmvig Reinkar from Iron-Blooded Orphans. Essentially, a sword stand on 2 legs. In the anime, it essentially just turned up, held a massive sword on its crotch, and just stood around doing nothing until Barbatos Lupus took it. But of course, when it comes to the model kit, Gunpla is freedom and you can do whatever you want with it. This is one big old simple sword. Its major aspect is that it is huge. Absolutely huge. It also comes with the option of splitting it in 2, that's into a big old sword and a smaller, yet still pretty big, mace. It has a sliding handle, so it can be used either one-handed or two-handed. And yeah, the whole point of this is it's a huge, big old piece of plastic. But it looks awesome. But hey, that is what this list is about. Is it big? Yup. Is it a sword? Yes, it is. When it comes to 1/44th scale kits, there is no denying that the real grade Sasbi is one of the all-time greatest. But one thing you may not know is, it also comes with one of the most, and in my opinion, the coolest looking beam sword around. That, of course, is the Beam Tomahawk. Wait a minute, Tomahawk is not a sword. Well, technically that doesn't look remotely like a tomahawk at all, so I count it as a sword. Seriously, that's a sword. There is a lot of awesome and big beam swords out there. For example, the Hyper Beam Sabers you can find with the Master Grade Double Zeta Verka or the Rezel AB Defensor type. Those are huge. They're literally perfect grade beam sabers that come with a master grade kit, but they don't look all that vigorous, do they? But then again, we do have some nice vigorous beam sabers with some other kits like the master grade Turn X, the master grade Providence Gundam, and the master grade Gundam X. All similar, awesome looking beam swords, but they're not that big. However, what we get with the real grade Sazabi's Beam Tomahawk, which again is a beam sword, not a tomahawk, can be used in a multitude of ways. That is an axe style way, which I guess is more tomahawky, but double-sided. Beam saber, like what you're seeing right here, again, looking quite vigorous. But my favorite is when you put it all together into this absolutely monstrous, glowing beam effect big old beam sword. And even better, you can attach it to the shield. This particular shade of plastic also glows under UV light and blue light, so that means it does make one hell of a display. Nothing beats out the real grade Sazabi's Beam Tomahawk. Moving on to the number 7 spot now, and opening up the floodgates to the Seed and Double O kits, because there's going to be a lot of them from here on out. When you think big Gundam swords, big awesome Gundam swords even, it's always going to be Seed and Double O. Leading the charge, ticking both the big and the awesome boxes, this one also adds chromed out to the list. This is the perfect grade Strike Gundam's Grand Slam. This sword is so big, so shiny, you could throw it in your cutlery drawer and fool someone into thinking it's a kitchen knife. It is the length of a kitchen knife. I honestly think if you ran down an alley screaming with this above your head at someone, they would legit think they're in danger. As for features, the Grand Slam has a folding gimmick so it can be stored away, including a sliding handle. Besides that though, it is quite basic, it does look awesome, and it has this handy dandy little hole in it so you can, do this. If you want to, I guess. So yeah, if you're looking for a Gunpla sword that's big and looks actually dangerous, then you might want the perfect grade Strike Gundam's Grand Slam. You know it would be completely impossible to have a list of massive Gundam swords without including some from Gundam Double O, and I will tell you already, there's 3 on this list. First up is Gundam Double O's GN Sword 3. Sure, this sword may not be as big as some other ones on the list, but it has a couple of extra awesome features. First off, it can fold up out of the way. When it's folded up, it's a beam rifle, which is pretty rad. But it is in sword mode that this thing truly looks awesome. Just like the GN sword we would have seen with Exia, but this time around it has that awesome green edge that gives it that later Gundam Double O feel, which looks spectacular. But like I mentioned, sure, this may not be as big as some other swords on the list, but this thing packs in a little bit of a secret. In the anime, this can emit a fairly large beam saber, and these kits make sure that the Gunpla can do that as well. Once you throw on the beam effect part, this thing goes from medium size to pretty damn big. And when you get this kit in the larger sizes like master grade or even perfect grade, this thing gets ridiculously long. On top of that, when you buy the Gundam Double O kit or any of the Gundam Double O kits, this comes with a whole host of other swords that are pretty damn huge as well. So if you are a fan of big Gundam swords, then the Gundam Double O is definitely something you'll want in your collection, especially for that GN Sword 3. But this is not as big as Double O swords get. But anyway, on to the top 5. So moving into the top 5 now, and we've got another Iron-Blooded Orphans kit, and this is the high-grade Gundam Astaroth Rinascimento. So out of this entire list, this to me is the number 1 Iron-Blooded Orphans sword, and I'll get into why that is very, very soon. But before that, I will mention there is a ton of awesome weapons when it comes to the Iron-Blooded Orphans high-grade line. We've got option kits, we've got tons of awesome kits, and they're all non-beam weaponry, which is something that I love. But as for why the Rinascimento is better than, say, just the standard Gundam Astaroth, Gundam Barbatos, etc., well, that's because this sword is both big and awesome. This kit includes the fold-up demolition knife we would have seen with the standard version of the Astaroth, but on top of that we've got the awesomely named Bastard Chopper. Both of these can combine together, and what you get is one huge wedge of a sword that can fire Dainsleifs. If you haven't seen Iron-Blooded Orphans, well, let's just say Dainsleifs are pretty crazy. This right here isn't a true Dainsleif, so it's not as powerful in the anime, but it's still pretty awesome to have a sword that fires them. However, I will give a bit of a disclaimer, this is a list about swords, and this kit did kind of let me down a little bit. It can't really support the sword too well. That's because when it comes to Iron-Blooded Orphans kits, sometimes there is some issues with the polycaps. These are definitely kits on the cheaper side of the spectrum, and you can kind of feel that at times. But when you're talking purely about swords, this one right here will not let you down. But the kit will let the sword down. Over and over again, all the time. Still an awesome sword though. At the number 4 spot in this list is that Gundam Seed Sword. And you might be like, well, what Gundam Seed Sword? I mean, all 3 of them. That is all of those anti-ship swords. From Strike Gundam's Schwertgewehr, or whatever it's called, Sword Strike's Excalibur, and Destiny's Arendite Beam Sword. All of these are huge, all of them are awesome, and they're super iconic when you think of Gundam Seed. Out of the entire bunch though, my personal favorite is the Schwertgewehr. Of course it'd be the one with the hardest name to say, right? It's big, long, has the business end beam, as well as an extra smaller beam that comes from the bottom. Personally, I've never looked at the Sword Impulse just yet. They do look awesome, but I can't give a personal opinion on any of those kits. As for the Destiny's folding version, I don't necessarily like the folding gimmick so much, and I don't think the sword looks as cool, but that's just a personal opinion. That's why I say all 3 are great. But there's something just about the simplicity and basic awesomeness of the one that does come with Strike. Whether it's 1/44th scale, 1/100th scale, or the absolutely colossal 1/60th scale perfect grade version, they all look pretty rad. So no matter if you collect high grade, real grade, master grade, or perfect grade, there's always a big old sword for you there. If you don't like them big, bulky, like some of the ones that'll be coming up very soon, and you like them more in the slender, typical sword style, this right here is the one for you. And by this, I mean all 3. So now moving into the top 3 biggest, baddest Gunpla swords, and this is where they get big, and I mean real big, I mean huge! And coming in at number 3 is probably the biggest chunk of plastic you can get when it comes to Gunpla swords. That of course is the 007 Sword G's Buster Sword. This thing is so big, so thick, so solid, it's technically a shield and a sword at the same time. At first, it looks pretty big, but it's got an included extending gimmick, which makes it even bigger. And if that wasn't cool enough already, this is the only big sword in this list that lights up. So whether you get the Master Grade or the Perfect Grade version of the 007 sword, both of which have LED technology in their swords. So if you like your swords big, thick, and lit, then the 007 Sword G is the one for you. And because this is called the 7 sword, of course, this box doesn't just contain the one sword, it contains 7 and a G. G is a gun, but it's technically a sword too, so that's 8 swords in this box. So yeah, you probably got it at this point already, but yeah, if you want big swords, you're looking at the Double O Gundam. Also, no matter what grade you do collect, you will find a Double O Gundam there because it's just one of those super popular kits. So whether you like high grade, real grade, master grade, or perfect grade, then there is a big old Buster Sword for your collection. I will mention though, it's only the master grade and the perfect grade that lights up. So moving on into the number 2 position in this list, and the second best, biggest, baddest Gunpla sword is, well, technically 2 swords. Which is kind of fitting for the number 2 spot. And the 2 massive swords in question is the Master Grade Quanta Full Sabers, GN Sword 5 GN Buster Sword, and the GN Sword 4 Full Sabers. So not only are they massive swords, they've got massive names too. Quanta's GN Sword 5 is a fairly big old sword in its own right, but once all those tiny other extra bits attach, what you get is a ridiculously massive clear green sword. I mean, this thing is out of this world big. Once again, as you'd expect from a 00 sword, there is a lot of variation involved here. These bits can all be attached up onto the shield up on the shoulder, they can all be used separately, or like I mentioned already, they can all be attached to the GN Sword 5 for that ridiculously big sword. And if that wasn't big enough, we've got a second huge sword in the Master Grade Full Saber variant. So this right here, the GN Sword 4 Full Saber, is my all-time personal favorite Big Gundam sword. The shape is fantastic, it's so spiky, it's got that absolutely beautiful 00 mix of blue, white, grey, and that clear green, and I just think it looks mesmerizingly beautiful. Once again, this is a weapon that can split up into multiple parts, be reconnected in multiple different ways, including, and not limited to, a massive GN guitar, a pair of knives, a pair of pistols, a launcher mode, and of course, it goes without saying that absolutely massive full saber mode. This thing is huge! And like I mentioned already, it's beautiful. So technically, if you wanted yourself a Gunpla kit with two huge massive swords, and I mean dual-wielding massive swords, then what you want is the Master Grade Quanta Full Saber. On top of that, this is also a fantastic kit. I love it, it's one of my all-time favorites. I ranked it gold tier, and I highly recommend this kit. I will mention though that you will need a whole bunch of stands and stuff to support these swords because they are a little bit on the, well, massive and heavy side. But besides that, this is a kit that will not leave you disappointed, and hey, what's better than one big bad sword? Of course, two of them. Now on to the number 1 spot. So moving on into the number 1 spot, and I had to kind of break one of my top 10 rules for this right here, and that is, like I mentioned in the intro, when I make these videos, I have to have reviewed the kit first in order to, well, technically to have the footage to make the top 10. But this right here is the classic. This is the number 1 Gunpla Big Sword, and it has been for quite some time, and it goes without saying that this is the Gundam Stray Red Frame Kai's tactical arms. So yes, I do have this kit, that's why I actually have the tactical arms right here to show you. There it is beside the other big swords that were in the top part of this list, and as you can see, it absolutely dwarfs them. I'm not going to get into all the stuff that this can do, but it can transform, it does look awesome, but the best aspect about this is just how awesome that massive sword looks. It's big, it's red, it's colossal. But because I have no footage of that actual review at all, from here on out you're just going to be seeing the Stray Red Frame Red Dragon. This is an awesome kit and it does have some awesome huge swords, which are the Cattle Wolves. They can combine into a big old sword, but they're just not quite as cool as the tactical arms. Once again, just like with a lot of the kits I mentioned in this list, when it comes to the Red Frame Kai, there is multiple variants of it available. So you've got the high grade, the master grade, which is what this sword right here is from, and then there is the perfect grade. Sadly, the perfect grade is P Bandai, but if you look at just how big the tactical arms for the master grade is beside the 007 Sword's Buster Sword, and then taking the perfect grade 007 Sword's Buster Sword, you can just imagine how massive that thing must be. Honestly, all that this list is doing right now is reminding me that I need to get my hands on a perfect grade Gundam Stray Red Frame Kai, because that thing looks so damn awesome. But yeah, even though I don't have that, I do have the master grade, and that is an awesome classic master grade that I do highly recommend. But anyway, that right there is it for the list. Once again, as usual, this is just a list of awesome swords from my personal collection, so I might have missed some that are, well, that I don't have yet. So as usual, if you do have some big awesome swords in your own collection that weren't mentioned in this video, then drop them down there in the comments so we can all check them out. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews and Gunpla top 10s, and I will see you next time.